I'm going to try and make it through 2 more items before we take a break. So we'll go ahead and open 10D. Humboldt County Elk Management Subplan Update, Chairman Drew and Commissioner Morai and Game Division Administrator Brian Wakeling, informational. The Humboldt County Elk Management Subplan Steering Committee met recently. A brief summary of the meeting will be provided, as well as a report on the committee's progress. So the committee did meet recently. I was in Winnemucca on Tuesday. I think there were some members of the subcommittee that were hopeful that this may be their last meeting. They had some questions come up from the public and also from the subcommittee members themselves. I think they're close on a plan, a draft plan that's ready to come to this commission. I think their hope is to have it to us by our March meeting, and I've constantly stressed to them that they can take as much time as they need to make sure they've got a document that Humboldt County is comfortable with. They have already started to interface with their county commissioners. In fact, one of their sitting county commissioners is on the subplan. They do have population objectives set for all the hunt units or game management units within their county. If you talk to the sportsmen in the county and outside of the county, they'll tell you that those population objectives are much too low. And if you talk to some of the ranching and farming and ag interests in the county, they will tell you that those objectives are much too high. And as always, that seems to be one of the more controversial issues. They do have a recommended, they call it a COT team. I'm trying to remember what COT stands for, Pete, but basically a team that would stay in place in the county to address elk issues going forward, whether that means looking at herd objectives and adjusting them up or down, or taking care of localized issues with elk that are maybe being a problem. I'm pleased with their process. It has not been easy. I think it turned into a more contentious process than they had anticipated, and it's probably been a less contentious process than I had anticipated. As I stated, our hope is that they may have a draft plan ready for us by March. My intent that I'll share with this board and that I shared with them on Tuesday is that when it comes before this board, I would like an opportunity for us to review their plan, provide some input, or if there's questions, provide that input and questions back to them so that they have an opportunity to review any questions or clarifications that this board may need. That would give them a chance to update anything in the plan that may be gray or in need of update, and then it would come back to us for ultimately a final adoption as the Humboldt County Elk Plan. So that's where we are in terms of process and where we're at now and what I anticipate going forward. Questions? Commissioner Morai, would you like to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, you were very thorough.
Real cool. Someone's looking for a break. Mr. Wakeling, was there anything you wanted to add? I know you had a scheduling conflict this time around.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I unfortunately did have a conflict, was not able to make it at this last meeting, but the feedback I routinely receive is very appreciative of the involvement of both you and Commissioner Morai of being there and providing that stabilization and kind of a sense of, and I think that was your intent when you at the outset to be there. I keep hearing really appreciation for you guys being there, and I'd also like to specifically point out that some of our staff, Ed Partee and Katie Harmon, have just been tremendous of continuing to interface with those folks. And I know they're also going to be planning to try and be present at the next county commission meeting, which I believe is coming up Monday, to continue that relationship.
Correct. And I think the next elk subcommittee meeting is, I'll get it. It'll be posted online, but February, do you remember the date?
20th is what I had in mind.
Saturday,
I thought it was February 20th.
And I think they're meeting at either 1 or 2 o'clock. So the agenda will be posted along with support materials on the committee site. Any questions or comments on 10D? If not, we'll close 10D. Go to item 10E, Sage Grouse update, Secretary Wadsley information. Secretary Wadsley will provide an update on the status of sage grouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might be easier if I just offer to take questions. The one thing I've seen I think 4 different articles and a press release from the governor's office, all in the last 24 hours, speaking to the mineral segregation proposal. And so, as a condition, one of the arguments made in the Fish and Wildlife Service's decision that came up with a not warranted finding in September, it was contingent upon the mineral withdrawal of a significant area in northern Nevada. The governor has asked the Division of Minerals, Department of Conservation, Natural Resources, and Department of Wildlife to determine if there is an alternative solution to the areas proposed for mineral withdrawal. We've worked with those other agencies and developed some alternative maps that are currently contained in our comments specific to the segregation piece. The segregation piece, as proposed, recommends the mineral withdrawal of 3.2 million acres of sage grouse habitat. So the process as it stands right now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service arrived at a not warranted finding in September. That not warranted finding was heavily contingent on mineral withdrawal. The mineral withdrawal piece, again, is a process called segregation. So there's basically a 2-year period where they'll evaluate not only the economic value of those lands being recommended for withdrawal, but also the value of the habitat in those areas. And there's presently an alternative plan that's been put forward by the governor's staff, alternative to what the secretary has recommended for withdrawal.
Questions? All right. Thank you, Tony. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break here between agenda items. We're at 4:02. Let's reconvene at 4:15, so we'll have about a 13-minute break, and we'll reconvene with item 10F. All right, we'll go ahead and reconvene the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners meeting here on Friday, January 29th in Las Vegas with teleconference feeds to Reno and Elko. We closed item 10E, so we'll move to item 10F. Department Activity Report, Secretary Wasley, informational. Secretary Wasley will provide a report on recent department activities. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of time, I'll just try to hit on a few key highlights here. Starting first with the Game Division. Annually, NDOW examines the wings submitted by sage grouse hunters to determine from characteristics of those wings what annual recruitment may be expected. This year's efforts yielded a statewide average sage grouse chick recruitment of 1.52 chicks per hen. With some regional variation noted, the western region had a value of 2.23, while the eastern region was at 1.18. Statewide nest success value was 39.6. The data indicates sage grouse populations seem relatively stable this year. 100 mountain quail. A lot of these, what I'll do is I'll just kind of give a topic sentence. If you guys have questions, I do have additional information and can delve into them a little bit more. But again, in the interest of time, I'll just try to give you the quick and dirty topic sentence. 100 mountain quail were released on the Massacre Rim in North Washoe County in early December. 53 turkeys from Utah were released in Battle Mountain January 19th. Captures to assess effects of State Route 160 on ungulates in the Spring Mountain Range were conducted during November. 12 bighorn sheep, 14 mule deer, 6 elk were captured and fitted with GPS collars. Bighorn sheep from Lone Mountain near Tonopah are intended to be captured on this Sunday. About 15 of these sheep will be fitted with transmitters that identify when they give birth and released in the Garfield Hills near Hawthorne. About 25 mule deer were radio marked with GPS transmitters as part of the ongoing movement monitoring studies associated with the Bald Mountain Mine expansion and Pequot crossing on I-80. The Fisheries Division, major fish kill at Rye Patch Reservoir beginning the first week of October may have resulted in the loss of the majority of the fish remaining in the reservoir. Likely cause of death was a toxic bloom of golden algae. NDOW staff completed a project to introduce hybrid tiger muskie to Chimney Reservoir in Humboldt County. Approximately 1,100 10 to 12 inch tiger muskie were released in late November. Water quality conditions at Cummins Lake in White Pine County prevented restocking the reservoir with trout or bass prior to ice up due to low oxygen and high pH after the reservoir was lowered last summer to remove the northern pike. Sparks Marina Pond also experienced another winter fish kill in December, not as severe as incidents that happened in 13 and 14, however. Annual midwinter dives to estimate Devil's Hole pupfish numbers were conducted in January. Average count was 135, which is a significant improvement over past years. NDOW Aquatic Invasive Species Program has received an additional $50,000 from the National Park Service to help support decontamination and inspection activities within the Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Habitat Division. The Habitat Division continues to coordinate with Clark County Regional Flood Control District to evaluate flood planning modifications for the Overton Wildlife Management Area. Record of decision for the Mason Valley Walker River Channel modification has been received in the cooperative project with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Great Basin Bird Observatory, and Otis Bay Ecological Consultants is expected to take place during the summer of 2017. Wildfire restoration efforts are underway with Western Region Habitat Division personnel. Approximately 4,000 acres will be reseeded associated with the Cold Springs fire in the Desatoya Mountains. Additionally, Eastern Region personnel are waiting for a break in the weather system to begin reseeding efforts across 12,000 acres in Eureka and Elko counties. Eastern Region has hired contractors for the Overland and Spruce Habitat Improvement Projects. The Spruce Mountain Project will treat 1,500 acres of pinyon and juniper with mechanical mastication. The Overland Pass Project will implement hand thinning across 6,700 acres of conifer encroachment. Collectively, these two treatments will eventually treat 38,000 acres of pinyon and juniper to improve mule deer and sage grouse habitat conditions. Habitat Division recently held stakeholder meetings in Reno, Las Vegas, and Elko to receive initial comment on the proposed industrial artificial pond permit regulation change. On personnel front, Clint Garrett, the biologist from the Northern Water Development Crew, was recently awarded the Ted C. France Employee of the Year Award. Clint was recognized for his efforts in bringing the agency's 1,700 plus guzzlers into compliance with legislation requiring hotline contact signage at every guzzler within the state. In typical Clint fashion, he was quick to point out that this was definitely a team effort, and without the hard work and support from crew members Eddie Willis and Cole Husted, it would have never been accomplished. A couple law enforcement items. We'll get some additional law enforcement updates tomorrow in the department project updates. Chief Game Warden Tyler Turnipseed will provide us some information on some specific cases that were made this year. I'll just cover a couple that won't be included in his presentation. The law enforcement area game warden is wrapping up an investigation in which a doe antelope was intentionally harvested near Ely on September 7th, the day before the season opener on the 8th. The caller on the Operation Game Thief hotline reported the violation. 2 Southern Nevada men pled guilty on December 1st to charges related to flying a plane in Washoe County. Tyler, Chief Warden Turnipseed did allude to that. Both the hunter and pilot reached a plea agreement to a charge of interfering with a lawful hunter. They will each pay a $500 fine plus court costs. Will be on unsupervised probation until 2017 to include obeying laws, paying fines, 8 hours of community service, and a 1-year license revocation in Nevada, along with the Interstate Wildlife Violator Compact states. This crime was also reported on the OGT hotline. Charges have been filed in Box Elder County, Box Elder County, Utah, for obstructing, and a charge similar to kidnapping or unlawful detention relating to a tense incident with an Elko County landowner in which Nevada and Utah game wardens were investigating the felony poaching of a bull elk in Nevada's Unit 081 in October. The detention charge stemmed from the landowner closing a ranch yard gate, allegedly in an attempt to prevent the departure of a Nevada game warden. The investigation of the poaching of the bull elk is wrapping up, and felony charges will soon be filed with the Elko County District Attorney's Office. We've received 65 calls to the Operation Game Thief hotline during the fall quarter. This is a hotline on which citizens can call to report wildlife violations and poaching crimes. Callers can remain anonymous and be eligible for reward money. At its meeting on January 21st, the Operation Game Thief Citizens Board voted to pay out a total of $1,600 in reward money to callers whose information resulted in successful convictions in 4 separate wildlife crimes. Endow Game Wardens drew 286 case numbers in 2015. These would include poaching investigations, boat accidents, arrests, and other significant incidents. In Conservation Education Division, the new conservation aids for urban wildlife began work in both southern and western regions. They'll serve as a single point of contact for urban wildlife issues in those regions. Conservation education staff participated in the Wild Sheep Foundation Youth Outdoor Experience, introducing over 1,000 kids to wildlife conservation. That occurred last week in Reno. 2016 Nevada National Archery in the Schools program state tournament just concluded at the South Point Hotel. The tournament was the largest to date for Nevada, and as a result was moved from the ballrooms to the hotel's practice arena. Outdoor education program held a series of hunter and angler education volunteer instructor recognition events. 8 recognition events were held around the state this month, including Reno, Winnemucca, Las Vegas, Tonopah, Caliente, Pahrump, Elko, and Eureka. A full-scale recruitment effort is underway in the southern region to recruit a new corps of volunteers to support a myriad of agency programs. Much of it is targeted at non-traditional general public audiences. The Southern Region Volunteer and Wildlife Education Coordinators attended a volunteer symposium hosted by the Outside Las Vegas Foundation. The symposium presentations addressed recruitment, retention, and use of volunteers in outdoor settings. Preparations have begun for the Clark County Fair to be held April 7th through the 10th. We'll once again have a catch and release fish tank, an archery range, the Operation Game Thief trailer, boating education trailer, and an exhibit hall. Southern Region Con Ed and law enforcement supervisors attended a coordination meeting hosted by the Clark County Parks and Recreation Department. Sunset Park was again the focus. Parks and Rec is moving forward with a volunteer program designed to improve park stewardship across all user groups, and will remain involved as it goes forward. From the Wildlife Diversity Division, the Wildlife Diversity Division recently completed an intense week-long mine claim marker pull on the Montezuma Bench near Tonopah. Over 2,000 illegal mine claim markers were pulled over the course of 4 days by 8 staff on 4-wheelers and on foot. Illegal hollow mine claim markers are a significant source of mortality for cavity nesting birds, mammals, reptiles, and insects. Of the more than 2,000 posts pulled, 60% of the posts on Montezuma's bench and 40% on Mesa had dead wildlife trapped inside. The program has treated over 17,000 mine claim markers in total over the past several years. Statewide, diversity biologists are monitoring winter hibernacula for evidence of white nose syndrome, a disease that's killing millions of bats in the eastern United States. As part of a federal grant, biologists have developed several temperature and humidity data loggers in mines and caves throughout the state. Each winter, data from these instruments are downloaded and analyzed to better understand which areas may provide conditions suitable for the fungus that causes white nose syndrome. In addition, at several monitoring sites around the state, individual hibernating bats are sampled for evidence of fungal spores. To date, this devastating disease has not been detected in Nevada, but early surveillance and proactive research will help lessen the effects of this disease should it spread to the state. Winter is an excellent time to survey for pygmy rabbits, a focal species on recent surveys in Elko County as part of the Diversity's multi-year study in partnership with UNR. 5 locations across Elko County were inspected for recent rabbit activity. Newly fallen snow made the effort very easy. All 5 sites have some level of rabbit use. From the Operations Division, in late November, approximately 50 headquarters staff at our Valley Road office and 30 headquarters staff at the Kitsky Lane office moved from those locations to our new headquarters facility. This move was a culmination of 13 months of planning to co-locate headquarters staff under one roof in a leased facility in South Reno. With the recent assignment of a larger office facility by the Division of State Lands to Endow at our Winnemucca complex, our engineering, maintenance, and information technology employees are in the final planning stages for the renovation of the office. Previously occupied by Join, Inc., this larger office is located on our Winnemucca property and will provide for expanded office space for our employees who have outgrown the existing office. The new office will also be shared with the Nevada Department of Transportation staff for a combined total of approximately 30 state employees. The new office will be ready for occupancy in the spring of 2016. With that, I'd entertain any questions.
Questions or comments by the commission? All right. Thank you, Director Wasley. With that, we'll close item 10F and go to item 10G, Wildlife Heritage Account Report. Deputy Director Liz O'Brien, informational. A report will be provided on funds available, interest and principal from expenditure from Wildlife Heritage Account in the upcoming year. Ms. O'Brien.
Thank you, Chairman Drew and members of the Commission. There's a one-page report in your material titled Heritage Trust Account Interest and Funding Summary. We have $688,231.51 available for distribution. This is down from last year. The decrease of $19,798 is from, this decrease is due to a small decrease in the heritage sales, particularly the elk tags. Not one sold for over $100,000 this last year, whereas in prior years they did. The funding is still up when compared to any other year on the list, as the PIW and Silver State tag sales were up again, as was discussed at the last commission meeting with the system consultant's report. Is there any questions?
Questions? All right, thank you. We'll close item 10G, go to item 10H, Administrative Procedures, Regulations, and Policy Committee Report. Commissioner and Committee Chair McNinch, informational. The Committee Chair will provide an update on recent committee activities and plans. Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Director O'Brien and Administrator Wakeling were there as well. So if I missed something you think needs to be thrown out, or members, please help me out here a little bit. So we did have a meeting on January 13th. And during the meeting, our primary concern was to get a couple of the policies, especially related to our rules of practice, try to get those moving. Those are important. They require a 3-year review and affirmation that needs to be submitted to the Secretary of State. We're due to have that completed. So we did do a review of policies 1, 3, and 4, and those policies have to do with how we conduct our business here with the commission. A lot of miscellaneous stuff under policy 1. I can go into detail if anybody has questions. And then policy 3 and 4, which relate to our appeals process and to our petition process. And so we, during our meeting, we did suggest some minor edits that the department will put together and bring back to us. We did the same with, there's also an administrative code aspect to that rules of practice, and we did not complete our conversation on that we'll need to talk about as a committee. But we did have some minor edits on policies 3 and 4. We didn't bring those forward now. We'll finish those up. We made some suggestions, some requests of the department. They'll bring them back to us. We'll consider them, and by March, we should have something to start completing our review of those particular policies. Some interesting conversations about them. When we're talking about our appeal process, there was conversation on providing clarification so that appellants understand the limitations that this commission has when it comes to providing relief for the coming here in front of us. There's certain things we can do and certain things we cannot do. And I think that they look at us as a final say in that. And if they've come into us and they've already been convicted of a wildlife crime, we're really there's not a lot we can do to help them. And so we do a review of make sure the department followed processes, and that's about all the remedy that we've got. And as we all know, the department's got a pretty good system in place, and we find very rarely is there any even conversation about process. So we want to provide some kind of clarification in there. What that looks like is to be determined. There was a conversation on the petition process, trying to clean that particular process up in terms of when a petition is submitted to the department. there's concern that when it makes it to this board for consideration, it's a frustrating process, and it's intensely frustrating for this board to find that something wasn't followed, that the procedure wasn't followed, or that there was an error in the submission of the petition that needs to be corrected and then resubmitted. And you know, with our wildlife contest one is a good example of that. So there's conversation about how to address that particular issue, and that it's not straightforward. It's complicated. You know, where do you leave that pressure point with the secretary of the commission, with the department? There's little traps all through the whole process. So, okay, sorry, I was trying to be technologically smart here, and okay. So we're gonna have some more conversation on that. Other than that, there's some minor edits. We kind of reaffirmed the delegation of policy 23 to the 23 or 25 to the Wildlife Damage Committee, and we did take action to delegate to propose delegating certain policies to certain groups. We don't have that in front of us today, but in March we'll bring that forward. So there's some stuff that we would suggest we refer to the Heritage Committee, to the TAC Committee, and the Public Lands Committee in particular. Those are but we thought it would be better served for them to take a look at it, take a look at those particular policies. Not that we're trying to shirk our responsibilities, but we'll bring those back and get validation from the commission before we kick those to the curb. So. We did have a conversation regarding the numbering system, and we decided that the department is of the belief that we could just literally, instead of having policy numbers, that we just refer them to them by their names, and the names of the policies. That it's probably just as productive. That way, things don't get written over things, and we don't have those particular problems in that sense. So, you know, there's some conversation that we'll have on that, and we'll bring that forward as well. But so that conversation came up. There was question about policy 26 had to do with the elk management policy, and I think the report back on that is that there was no intentional discarding of that policy. There was no intent to hide it anywhere. What appears to have happened is that it kind of migrated into our elk management plan process, where, you know, which states that anytime we have a pioneering herd of elk into an area, then we have to put together a management plan for that. And so that policy kind of that's the higher level version of that, and it's just kind of moved forward in that sense. Now, the fact that other policies were named at 26 it appears to be very unintentional, and it's just that the policy wasn't being used as a policy per se. It had taken on a different life, and we're using that what that policy had set up. We live that with our elk management plans and stuff, our sub plans, the development of our plans. So let's see here. I think that probably about does it. We can. There was actually so with regards to new policies, there were suggestions for new policies brought out. Some of those during our last commission meeting, some of those by the public, and I will throw a couple of those out on the table. There was a request to consider writing a policy on non-target wildlife, having to do with our trapping activities, human dimension work, and a legislative platform, and of course the wildlife contest. And there's one other one that kind of hit the table that we never, that's a huge conversation. We had a little bit of it today in a couple areas, and we'll have a lot more of it, I'm sure, and that had to do with the concept of fair chase, developing a policy or a stance on fair chase. And that's a wide open, really big topic, but those are the things that came up. So for March, our intent will be to bring what we can of policies 1, 3, or 4 to the commission, so that we can do our review and make modifications, revisions as necessary, if necessary, affirm those policies so we can get them turned into the Secretary of State as we're required to do. And hopefully we'll be able to have some conversation on some of the other policies. we did put a prioritization list together, and I believe that Kim is working on finalizing that as a handout, and we'll reaffirm that and make sure that we're good as we move forward. But in the meantime, I think that's where we stand. So if there's any questions or comments.
I appreciate that, Commissioner McNinch, and the committees. Obviously, the members, I appreciate them getting the ball rolling. It's kind of a daunting task, especially at the beginning. So I appreciate you guys getting the ball going on this, and we'll work through it piece by piece. So, questions for Commissioner McNinch or any of the other committee members? Anything to add from the department standpoint on that? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close item 10I.